which is about Power On, the story of Xbox. As part of the 20th anniversary celebrations, Xbox have released a free 6-part documentary series looking at the crazy history of Xbox. So available on YouTube or, on your pirate sites or whatever you want to get it. Previously, back in Jan, Bloomberg ran an article named Xbox, The Oral History of an American Video Game Empire by Dinah Bass. She actually writes a lot of articles along with Jason Schreier I've found.
It's funny, you saw her name pop up in one of the documentaries so she's been with Bloomberg for ages, I didn't realize.
Yeah, so we've covered some of these stories in the past, but so out of all of us, I'm the least fan of Xbox. I think, they're fine and everything like that, but Swinny's the mega fan and Mike's you probably play mostly on the Xbox if you have a choice.
Yeah, mostly.
I only played the 360 and I have no interest in anything beyond that. But I got addicted to this, man. I started watching the first episode and I'm probably the least biased here, but I'll give them a lot of credit. Like, it felt like obviously it is their slant on it and they've paid for it, so they're not going to blast themselves. But as a whole, honestly, I walked away from it going, why did they get into video games? Like, it seemed like they're paying out billions all the time for either studios
Just
or
to fix shit,
F-ups, and they're fixing consoles.
Because that's where the money is. That's what they said to begin with. They knew this is where... No, but they knew that that's where the industry was going to go. And I think one of the first episode, which is chapter 1, The Renegades, that talks about the genesis of the entire Xbox business, talks about how really the reason Bill probably ultimately approved it is because he was afraid that they were going to get left behind by Sony.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's sort of the reason why they did it. And then they just doubled down on it.
Yeah, and you can't play the what ifs, right? You can't play the... what if they didn't do it? What would happen? Nothing would happen. Okay. You don't know. Like, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would be a disaster for them. So, yeah, you never know those kind of things.
But you also don't know. I mean, they drove a lot of that stuff in the industry, so you don't know what would have happened if, say, Sony was the only player in the game. Having no competition, maybe innovation wouldn't have been as high. We wouldn't have seen the kind of stuff that we see today. Or maybe a complete third party would have come in. Heck, maybe even Nintendo would have completely done something different.
Yeah, sure.
If Microsoft weren't around. So it definitely had a huge impact, I think, on the industry. Stuff that we take for granted nowadays.
The one thing I wanted to shout out before I throw to Swinny is I give respect to Don Matrick to actually come on, show his face, and actually talk on the doco. I think out of everyone, and it's also about narrative. We all work at big corporates, but narrative is super important internally, and especially if you're sort of the last guy or the last guy that really blew things up. It's the way you talk about that, even you sort of put everything onto that person, and you also do the whole thing of, they did their best, but let's just not talk about it, right? Let's they fucked everything up, but it's all right, let's move on. And I give the guy credit for coming on, right? I'm not even saying that he came off that well, but I give him credit for coming on and talking and sort of going, look, this is what we thought, and they kind of took a bet on something and it didn't work. And I did like how they memed themselves with the Xbox One presentation, which was a disaster. And it was good. It was interesting. And the other one thing I wanted to say before Swinny jumped on was I liked how Mike Matei was actually a little tiny segment
I know.
of the thing. I was like, that is so weird. And I loved it. It'd be so cool if it was if he was watching it, he's like, oh shit, that's me. What the hell?
Yeah.
But Swinny, what did you think? You're the mega fan.
They may have got clearance for some of those people. We don't know. There's a lot of Angry Joe in this one.
I'm sure.
But look, just up front, if you like video games, which obviously you listen to this show, if you like knowing how games are made, if you care about the history of video games, watch this. Now, it's not perfect. It's obviously... There's certain things where they definitely angle it that are a little questionable, but this is such an important, I guess, thing to watch. I wish we had this for all the consoles. I would love something like this for Nintendo. Oh my god, I would. They would never do it.
Nintendo would ever do that.
But I would love it
It'd
so
be
much.
awesome, yeah.
Dude, I'll be like eating that up, man.
It would be amazing. So huge props to Microsoft and Xbox for doing this. Huge props to, I think it's 10100, the production studio as well behind this. I have a huge amount of respect for any person or any, I guess, entity that is willing to show its weaknesses, even if they angle things. And they showed a lot of weakness in this. You know, they talked a lot about, as you mentioned, the failure of the Xbox One and the approach there. They talked a lot about the hardware failures with the 360, the Red Ring of Death. They talked a lot more about things they got wrong. And that's something that doesn't happen that often. You know, often that sort of stuff is swept under the rug, and it only comes out through articles and third parties writing about it. But it's just a great watch. I kind of wish that, because the majority of it, like I'd say the first half of it's almost all about the original Xbox launch and how the Xbox itself came to be, which was amazing. But I wanted them to dig a bit deeper on like the 360 stuff that wasn't the Red Ring and the Xbox One. So I understand they needed to reach an endpoint, which was like, okay, we need to talk about where we are now. But I kind of wanted more. I wanted like deeper dives in some of the later generation stuff, you know?
Honestly, it felt like a 10-part documentary.
Yeah.
That they made a 6-part.
Yeah.
And they sort of got through the 4th, and then they were like, oh, we don't have the budget for 10. Because it was weird. I agree with you. Like, 2/3 of it was just Xbox One. And then it was like really rushing through. Like, I'm pretty sure they brought up 360 and then the Xbox One in the same episode from memory.
Yeah, it zoomed through really quickly, and
it was kind of a bit crazy because like Xbox, I know they did touch on it, and I'm kind of glad about that, but Xbox 360 pioneered so many things that it honestly doesn't get enough credit for. Like when I got one, you know, that was really getting back into gaming a little bit, and then I went off it again, but like it was awesome to connect. Like Mike and I used to play like Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 1, actually. That's how old we are. Like the original Modern Warfare, like at night, you know, you have your headset. It's like a social media platform. Like it genuinely, like
it was,
I kind of forget it was before all the major social media platforms, like Facebook. It literally predates Facebook, and it was awesome. And it works, in my opinion, still better for me. The 360 worked better than like anything that PlayStation, Nintendo does, and Discord. Like I still just preferred the way that worked, and how, you know, and I'd imagine Xbox Series works as good, if not better, than the way the 360 worked. I don't know. I don't have one, but just something about the way it all worked and tied together. It was just simple.
It was simple. I remember prior to that, if you wanted to play a game with someone, the last time I had done stuff, I had to put IP addresses in.
That's what I was going to say.
You know, like random shit like
my
that.
IP address.
Now it's you just go to their name, invite them to a party.
It was so sick, man.
So the thing I had probably the most like, you know, qualms with was they had an episode that kind of half the episode was focused on Halo, which is obviously important. Halo is their killer app, and you know that's what made Xbox.
Yeah, for sure.
But kind of the way they approach is Halo being the first to do everything with that. Now they mention it later, but there's like even a clip where they're showing one of the devs, and they've literally got a 64 controller next to them.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, look, I never played GoldenEye that much, but really, I thought multiplayer.
They laid it on very thick. But
even Turok was before that as well. You know, now the thing is like they skirted around it, so you could definitely like, you know, see, you know, it's word salad kind of stuff. But the one thing they said is like Halo was the first to do like the twin stick thing, which is just absolutely wrong. It was actually Alien Resurrection on PlayStation 1 that actually did that first, and it actually got slammed for it. So
it was too complicated, right?
Yeah. So I just, by and large, like everything else, I was cool with. But obviously, Halo standardized that stuff, and Halo was the first shooter that kind of bridged the gap between PC and console.
Ushered in the era of dual. Like you got to give it credit for like if they said it. I get what you're saying. I did also.
You might as well move the Halo hater over to me.
I also agree that they were laying it on a bit too thick. It was like there was a line, and they went a little bit. It was like one, you know, applaud it too many, and it was like, you guys are getting a bit over the top. But I would give them the credit of saying it ushered the era in of first-person shooters on consoles with twin-stick shooting.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And everyone sort of were like, does that really work? I still prefer keyboard and mouse. I'm a dinosaur, right? But it's amazing to me that people are like legitimately, like, you know, using a controller's better. I'm like, that's crazy to me. But it's Halo's got a lot to do with changing people's thoughts about how that all works. That was the first game that really changed people's mind about it.
So a couple other random thoughts, I guess, for me to close off my, I guess, how I view this. I love that they brought up Jurassic Park Trespasser for Seamus Blackley as like, weird. Hey, that game was one of the biggest failures, and like he was the guy behind that, and he was like one of the key members. It was great. I loved it. The other one, I never knew how much I needed to hear Snoop Dogg talking about the Red Ring of Death. Like, that made me laugh so much to have him talking about something so... I'm not saying it's niche, because obviously it's not niche in gaming, but to have someone like Snoop Dogg talking about the Red Ring of Death is just amazing.
But he's a big gamer. So...
also, funny thing is, and I could be wrong, I'm fairly certain, so they had like a montage... They had lots of game footage and stuff interspersed, which is... It's interesting to see which ones they chose for which and stuff. But they're talking about the Xbox One X. Now, think about how long ago that launched. In the montage for that, they actually had footage of Dying Light 2, which still hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yeah, the city part. Yeah.
Anyway, and the fact they had Laura Bailey doing a little bit of narration, which anytime I hear her talk, I just think of Kaine from Nier saying fuck all the time. Like, it's just funny to hear when she's like being all super professional and stuff. So, cool. Overall, I thought this was great. Really worth a watch for any. As I said, anyone that's interested at all in video games should probably watch this.
Yeah, the quick tier list. It's like the Smash Dock is S tier. That's the greatest. Like, that's just way up there. But this is a solid like B or A in my opinion. Like, and there's not that many great, video game docs at this length. You know, there's some really cool ones that are like an hour that, Video Game Historian, No Clip, stuff like that. But at this length and this quality, it's like right up there. Like, No Clip's the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head. So, yeah, look, I'm surprised they didn't talk more about Rare. Like, it was like they didn't mention Rare.
Yeah, that is
I think once from memory.
Yeah, that's actually good. I guess because that didn't probably have, while they're not in a horrible place or anything, it didn't probably have like a great ending to that one. Like, the story is still kind of... It's like
Rare is very popular.
It is, but it's not the Rare that I guess people think of, So, and Everwild is in development hell at the moment. So
it just that was one thing that surprised me a little bit that they didn't mention at all. I did like that they mentioned the Nintendo stuff, and they were very honest about that. Just like Nintendo had like absolutely zero like negative interest in talking to them about being acquired.
Even having like Jack Tretton, the old CEO of PlayStation,
that was cool.
Coming up quite a bit. Like, it's wild. I was waiting for Reggie to show up. He was in some footage, but I was hoping he would show up because he's been in. I think they did a round table with them recently, but yeah.
But I think he understands this is a marketing effort. He doesn't want to help the enemy.
Clearly,
too much.
yeah.
Well, the round table was a marketing effort as well.
Yeah, but like that's more of an industry.
But they should have just had him on, and he should have just gone. We didn't want anything to do with it. That's it. Just.
But the last thing I wanted to mention before we move on to our big year in awards is The Rock, and because I know you're a huge fan of wrestling, Swinny, but The Rock and Bill Gates is freaking awesome. Like that
was awesome. Yeah,
it actually is true. The random charisma that they had, and it's carried by The Rock, to be fair, and just Bill Gates allowing himself to look like a bit of an idiot. It was actually pretty awesome. Like it works. It really does work.
It's one of those iconic moments in like video game, I guess, like not the gaming side of it, like the business side of video games, It's so cool.
It worked, dude. It worked. And I still associate The Rock with Xbox for some really crazy reason. So yeah, cool doco. Check it out. It's free. So just jump on YouTube. Not many people have watched it, to be honest. So I looked at the view count. I was kind of surprised how low it was. So.
To be fair, I watched most of it on you can watch the actual movies through the Xbox movie thing.
Oh,
it's also available through there. Yeah,
so maybe some of the view counts
to buy for free. So maybe some of the view counts would have gone through stuff like that.
No, fair enough. Cool. All right, Swinny, was that another ring or something?